The CoinWeek Podcast is brought to you by PCGS, the standard in the rare coin grading industry. To learn how PCGS's new NFC anti-counterfeiting technology can benefit you and your collection, visit www.pcgs.com. Lovers of treasure will definitely want to check out this week's episode of the CoinWeek Podcast, where I am joined by Daniel Frank Sedwick, who will talk about an amazing 300-year-old Spanish gold coin that was lost when the 1715 plate fleet was stricken by a series of hurricanes off the coast of Florida. This gold coin was likely struck as a presentation piece and is much more refined and detailed than your typical gold cob of the period. It's a fascinating coin with a great provenance, which can be tracked from the moment it was made to the moment it was discovered and held in private hands. We talk about this coin next on the CoinWeek Podcast. Hi, Dan. Thanks for joining me on the CoinWeek Podcast. It's not every day that you get to see something as important and spectacular and conditionally amazing as this 1713J8 Escudos Royal that is coming up for sale as part of Sedwick Treasure Auction 28. What can you tell me about the coin and how does it fit in the pantheon of great shipwreck coins?
Sure, yes. This is, I would say, one of the top coins that we have ever handled. And the significance of it is that it was a special presentation issue. This was something that one had speculated many years ago was something, as we say, fit for a king, and that's why it's called a royal. But the truth of it is that they did make presentation issues at the Spanish colonial mints when they were hand-striking coins. And as you can imagine, they were as perfect as the coins could be made. They were generally round, and all of the elements of design were placed properly and not double-struck, not poorly centered. Just anything that you would expect basically from a modern coin, but with a rustic look that only a hand-hammered coin can give you. And these are well-known items in silver coins, and in fact we do find from other mints, particularly in Potosí, Bolivia, the mint documents do show that there's a term called galano for just these very pieces. And we still don't really know exactly what the purpose was, but it appears that special people would go to the mint and order these. You know, they were more expensive to make, and we have evidence that there was a higher or a lower yield, rather, per a certain amount of silver. So that's all kind of translated into what we see at the Mexican mint, and particularly with the gold coins. The thing is, with gold coins, gold royals, there are very, very few known. There are books written on the silver royals of the other mints and of the Mexican mint as well, but specifically Mexico City mint gold royals are a very rare thing. In the research that I did prior to this auction, I think I came up with about 40 examples. And that covers really just a few dates, 12 or 13 dates. So what's cool about this piece is that, as I say, it came from a shipwreck, and specifically from the 1715 fleet. So that's a big tie-in for us as well, because we're known for shipwreck material. So basically the most important thing from a shipwreck that you could ever find numismatically is a gold 8 Escudos Royal. Very big, very impressive, very high grade, because as you can imagine, these were very well protected pieces, and then extremely rare. That's all those modifiers talk about this piece, and on top of all that, it's a date of which only 2 are known. So
let's take a step back for people who may not have much familiarity with this period of coinage, especially coinage originating from the Americas. Obviously, this was struck under the authority of the Spanish crown. But why did the American mints create such primitive coins that we call cobs when their counterparts in Europe were able to create such elaborate, impressive, and uniform coinage? Why were they allowed to create cobs in the first place to the point where a coin like this Royale would stand out?
Well, in a word, the answer is volume. It's a deeper question than that. The technology was certainly there in Spain. The Segovia Mint was making beautiful machine-made perfect coins like the rest of the European countries, but the cob coinage, as we call it, the hand-struck coinage, was an expedient for the fact that they had more silver and gold than they knew what to do with in the New World. So that really is the key. They were hand-striking coins in what we call cob fashion, which means that there was a very haphazard way of preparing the planchet. They didn't spend extra time to make a very round or evenly flat planchet before striking. And all of that was an expedient to get tons and tons of silver through the mint as quickly as possible. Gold was a similar situation, but we generally see the planchets for gold coins in a little bit better shape. And then, of course, the royals, the presentation pieces, they took much more extra time to make sure they were round and flat. So it's, like I say, the short answer is volume, but when you're talking about the special pieces, there's no kind of volume at all.
We often talk about ingots from this period, and we talk about metal being in a temporary state. I'd imagine that these primitive coins would also be in a temporary state, an expedient way to transfer them from one continent to the other. But if you're going to show the king or some other high-ranking official the output from a mint in the Americas, maybe you'd want a coin like this that's far more complicated and sophisticated, one that rivals the very best coinage of your own mint in your home country. Would that be a reason that you would see as a purpose for creating this royal type of coinage, or is there some other reason?
It's possible, but the evidence that we see in the documentation, and I'll say the scant evidence that we see behind the term Galano, specifically at the Potosi Bolivia Mint, indicates that these were ordered by private individuals or dignitaries. They weren't ordered necessarily anyway, by any mint officials to indicate that they were doing a good job or something like that, or especially from the crown itself to show other countries that the coins were being made to a high degree of quality. But the evidence indicates that these were instead specifically made, the royals anyway, were specifically made as presentation pieces for some kind of, like I say, decorative purpose. Not quite a medal, but just something to, I guess, to have a special piece for special people.
Let's talk a little bit about pedigree. This coin comes from a very important shipwreck site. What can you tell me about when this coin was discovered? And talk to me a little bit about the 1715 Plate Fleet shipwreck site and what it produced for collectors.
Well, that's one of the most exciting aspects about this coin. It's not often that you can take a coin from 1713, specifically this date, and be able to trace its entire history throughout its entire lifetime. I mean, think about that for a second. Take some U.S. coins that have long pedigrees or even longer pedigrees on coins from Europe, for example. You don't ever get, or rarely do you get, on a coin of this age, a complete curriculum vitae for the piece. And that's what we have here. That's one of the things that really makes a piece like this stand out. Now, that goes for a lot of the coins that we get from this particular shipwreck, which is known as the 1715 fleet. These were coins that were fresh from the mint and were being shipped back to Spain, and it was quite a backlog because the War of Spanish Succession had prevented the usual fleet system to run its course. And so for at least a dozen years, all the coins were backing up in the depots to go to the ships. So we see a big range of dates, and for whatever reason, the royals of several different dates, not just this date, were included in the shipment that was going on the 1715 fleet. Now, what just about everybody connected with coins in Florida knows is that the 1715 fleet sank off the east coast of Florida, and all of the ships were lost. There was one ship that was kind of a tag-along. It was a French ship, and that almost obliviously went through it. But the other ships sank in a hurricane, And there were a lot of survivors. Some of the ships sank in very shallow water. The reefs off the east coast of Florida are not too far offshore. So there were survivors, and there was salvage. The Spaniards at the time did organize salvage for a couple of years. And then another problem came along, and that was pirates. And pirates came and stole a lot of the treasure that had been salvaged and even did some salvage themselves. So it's very interesting that this was a shipwreck disaster that was salvaged in its own time. And yet, starting in the late 1950s, early 1960s, we see a large-scale salvage effort done in modern times using modern equipment, scuba and metal detecting and even aerial viewing of the shipwreck sites. All of that these were modern tools that allowed people to get deeper and find more than what was able to be salvaged back in the early 1700s. So that's the long story behind how this coin got to the east coast of Florida. And then the other half of the story is what happened to it from there. It actually wasn't until 1998 that this coin was found. And that's a very exciting part of the whole story because we know the diver who found it, and he will be speaking prior to our auction in an online forum. And his finds were pictured on the cover of a magazine and other places. What was interesting is that this wasn't the only royal that he found that day. He started out finding a 1698 royal that became part of the state of Florida collection. And then later the same day, on the same wreck site, he found this royal too. And there's more exciting little tidbits about the story that he will talk about in due course. But what was exciting for us, obviously, is that here is a coin that not only did we know that it went down on the 1715 fleet and was recovered in our time, but we also know the very person who found it, the very day that he found it, and all the other circumstances behind that. And by the way, the specific wreck site where this was found, because the 1715 fleet, as I say, was 11 ships, this is what's known as Corrigan's Wreck. It's about 5 miles or so north of Vero Beach, and it's among the more northern most of the shipwreck sites from the 1715 fleet, and not really too far from shore. In fact, that's one of the places where people on the beach do metal detect very often and try to find some of the treasure that was lost. But from there, it's a very simple story. It was divided among the finds for that year with the Mel Fisher Company because the Mel Fisher Company owned the leases. And of course, the state of Florida got their division as well. Their cut is 20%. But the state of Florida also has an arrangement where they get first shot at anything unique. So what was very interesting in this particular case in 1998 was that they found 2 royals, and at the time, one was unique, and the other one, this one, was there were only 2 known, or there had been 1 known, and now then 2. And the state had neither one of these dates, so they had to make a decision as to which royal they could take, because if they took both royals, then obviously their 20% rule would be violated in a big way. And if I remember correctly, even just 1 royal, the value of 1 royal threw off the percentages pretty badly for them in that year. But in any case, they took, the state of Florida took one of the royals, and then the other one went to a collection that is a very strong collection in many areas, but one of the aspects of that collection is some of the most beautiful coins of Mexico, and some of his material has been sold already. And here we have this piece. So, like I say, definitely a unique opportunity where we know the entire birth and life of this coin.
What would be the analog in U.S. numismatics to a coin like the 1713J 8 Escudos Royal? Is there a popularly known coin in American numismatics that you would say is the rough equivalent to a world coin like this, a discovery like this?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not quite as well versed in United States coinage, but I guess you could compare it to something like a Stella, in that it's not a pattern piece, but it is definitely not made to circulate. These a gold royal was something that was just meant to present and to be held as a jewel. What's interesting is that most royals that we know of in silver and several gold as well were holed, and obviously were worn as jewelry, and which is another interesting aspect about these royals, that the gold royals, at least, were, every one I've ever seen, was struck on axis, so that the cross on the reverse is straight up and down relative to the shield on the obverse. So you have something that was designed to be like a medal in the first place. In that regard, then, you could consider it just like one of the more historic medals in U.S. Collector history, like maybe or just any one of the peace medals or something like that, Libertas Americana, anything like that. It's hard to compare, though, because it really is a different type of coin, and you can compare it on several different levels. You can compare it on a level of population, and there are only two known of this one, or you can compare it on the level of, was it struck for circulation or as a pattern, and there are different U.S. coins you can compare with there, or you want to compare it on how does it relate within its own scheme, and that's probably what I would focus on more, that within the grand scheme of Spanish colonial numismatics, and specifically the cob period, this is an 8 Escudos Royal stands out far above all the other types of coins.
I know you'd probably hate to do this, but what do you think the estimated value of a historic object like this is? The market for this material is about as strong as it's been in recent years. It's a growing segment of the coin market. Do you have a feel for what you think this coin will bring at auction?
Well, that's the beauty of auction, is that the market will set a number, and obviously we have to do our due diligence and come up with a logical number to start with, or to at least give people an idea. And the number that we have is $300,000. That's a pretty established level for what an 8 Escudos Royal should cost these days. But that's all in quotation marks, because it's not like you can go out and buy one at any moment. You know, this is something that rarely comes along. And then that's just the starting point. You know, you ask me what my feeling is. I really have no feeling for how high it could potentially go. There's so much unknown in the market today in terms of what two people or more will do just to get the one item that they really, really want. That just is not predictable at all. Historically, the record is about $600,000 for a gold 8 Escudos Royal. That, in fact, is the record price for any Spanish colonial gold coin. So there's kind of a range, I guess.
So you said this coin was recovered in 1998, eons ago as far as the real world is concerned, but still fairly recent. Do you know of any comparable finds like this still being made from the 1715 plate fleet? Is there still more coins of this quality left to be discovered?
Well, that is the magic question, isn't it? And there are legions of divers and treasure salvers out there who are in firm belief that there is a lot more out there. And I have to believe it, too. I mean, the evidence is that the Spaniards certainly did not salvage everything, but the truth of it is that we just don't know. You know, there was so much material that was lost, and there was also so much material that was contraband that we cannot accurately look at any kind of cargo lists and say, well, that's it, everything was found. We just don't know. That answers the second part of your question, but the first part as to whether there has been anything else, yes, most definitely. In fact, it was one of the great ironies that in the year 2015, after kind of a so-so number of years of salvage, all of a sudden, exactly 300 years to the date that the 1715 fleet went down, they found. I think it was 9 more Royals, 8 Escudos. I think earlier, just prior to that, they had found another one. So for that season, they actually found 10 8 Escudos Royals, just like this one, but not this date. So after that, obviously, that increased the quantities of some other dates. Those dates were 1711, 12, and 15. all of which had been known prior, but they didn't find any 13th. But you don't know. You don't know one day to the next what will be found. All we know is that these things are extremely rare, whether they're from the wreck or not. So you don't expect to see any more quantities to come up, but like I say, that's what keeps all the divers going, is that there's always a possibility when you're dealing with something unknown. There's always a possibility that there's more out there.
Well, yet another reason to visit the coast of Florida.
Exactly.
So, Dan, good luck with this auction. Can you tell our listeners when the live auction starts for this piece?
The live auction will take place on November 17th. And then, as I said before, on the 16th, the day before, we will have a live forum where some speakers will be talking about certain topics. And Clyde Kuntz, the diver who recovered this specific coin in 1998, will be speaking that afternoon on the 16th. But the auction is the 17th in the morning on Tuesday, the 17th of November.
And if somebody wanted to order a catalog or register to bid on this or any other object that's going to be offered, what's your website and how do they register?
All they need to do is go to our website, www.sedwickcoins.com. We will have the lots up there for viewing, and there will be catalog ordering information and everything else that you need to get started and get ready to bid.
All right. Well, good luck, Dan, and thanks for sharing this story with me. It's a really cool coin.
Thanks so much, Charles. I appreciate the interest.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
If you like this podcast, please share it with your friends. Remember, you can download every episode of the CoinWeek Podcast for free on the iTunes Store, stream it online on our YouTube channel, or on CoinWeek.com. For CoinWeek, I'm editor Charles Morgan. Until next time, happy collecting.